Alright, for MKSPC, normally I go High Elf for any build. Um, Breton gets used sometimes, like if we're doing Rock Grove hard mode, it's super demanding on putting out burst heals. So the extra resource regen from Breton goes a little bit further than what you would get off of a High Elf for the crit and healing output that you would get off of High Elf instead of Breton. Because if you don't have resources, you're not healing anybody. That's more of a problem. When you run MK, the High Elf does have the passive that gives you stam back. Depending on what content you're doing, you may need to take points out of this. But if you're running Spalder, you should be okay keeping all of the points in. It really depends on what you're doing to drain your stam. So I would start out with no points in it, and then if you're having an issue with your stam, put more points in as you go to figure out where your comfort level is. I always run the Master Resto front bar. It's important for people to have their resources back on it anytime you put out the healing springs. So if you're a group healer, which you normally will be if you're running SPC, keep the Master Resto on. I run powered front bar, weakening enchant. Back bar is going to be where your martial knowledge is. If you are the source of brittle, if you have like a really poor comp and nobody's running double ice, I would run charged instead of infused. But your general default is infused with a crusher enchant. If crushing is 100% taken care of by tanks and you're just doing nothing with that enchant being on your bar, switch over to a weapon damage enchant. It will help your healing output as well as your damage. Whenever you run Spalder, put a Magma Incarnate helm on to help counter the resource sap. For Sunspire, I generally run 7-piece light. There isn't really a need for medium in there. Since Spalder is medium, this would be, I'm sorry, Spalder is light. Okay, so we're with 7-piece. I don't know why I thought it was medium. Other content, the extra crit from a 2-piece medium does go a bit of a way, so it's really preference, but I like doing 7-piece light in Sunspire. So, spell power cure always goes on body. You want to make sure that hot is going out on both bars. Make sure you're overhealing. You're getting credit for both bars, so make sure that's always 100% uptime on the 5-piece. For jewelry, I'll mix Swift around sometimes, depending on the content, but Sunspire, you're not going anywhere. You're stationary all the time. So I run 3-piece infused. It is a minimal difference between arcane and infused, but I do prefer the little extra bonus that infused gives you over arcane, so mine are 3-piece infused. I run 1 mag recovery on my neck, and then the other 2 are spell damage. It's mix and match, personal preference on that. If you don't need the recov, go 3-piece spell damage. If you need more recov, put more mag recov on instead of spell damage. Your rotation, there are rotations on healers, contrary to popular belief. You just want to make sure that you're putting out the lowest timers first and letting the rest run. General rule for a healer is when in doubt, combat prayer. Combat prayer is your most important skill, regardless of what class you're running on, regardless of what job you're doing. If you have a resto staff on, your job is to combat prayer the group. It is not a smart target, meaning that it doesn't automatically apply to the people who don't have it. You could hit combat prayer 10 times in a row and everybody will get it except for one person. It's really obnoxious. So generally, especially if the group is spread out, you'll want to move around. If they're kind of V-formed, if they're clustered, you'll put out a combat prayer in 2 different directions to try to make sure it hits everybody. Combat prayer is the first skill you hit on your front bar. It is the last skill you hit when you leave your front bar. Make sure that has 100% uptime. people start dying, it's generally because your combat prayer has fallen down. In order to proc your Dawn's Wrath passive, the normal default is Power of the Light. If tanks aren't putting out puncture, that means the target that everybody is aiming for is generally not getting 100% uptime on minor breach, and that's normally the Templar's job to do. Even with people using physical damage instead of spell damage these days, I still don't 100% trust it. Just can't really be too sure, so you might as well cover that base, especially if it's a free spot and you just need to get the proc out for the Dawn's Wrath passive. So Power of the Light is my go-to. If we're in kinds where the tanks are always just right on the boss's ass, you can switch it over to Purifying Light, because Purifying Light is a really decent hot on top of everything else. For your stam drain, my default is normally Rapids. It's the highest costing stam skill there is. It takes the least amount of maintenance to try to make sure my stam is down. The other really good ones to go for are Ring of Preservation, would be a good one to go on as long as the group is clustered and they can benefit from it. You could do Bone Shield. I'm not a fan of Bone Shield personally, because I just find myself having to hit it 3 or 4 times to make sure that my stam is down enough to get the MK proc off, and the point here is to make sure that MK is having the best uptime possible, so I just go back to Rapids. It does have the group benefit also when we're moving. During flight phase on the dragons, it can have its benefit just trying to hustle to the right spot, even though it is like 5 or 10 steps away. And then the ad waves, obviously when we're getting to the next boss, Rapids goes a long way. So that is my default. You can also do Vigor, but you're going to be spamming it a lot with the way that you regen in a trial group. The other thing is shards. Generally in Sunspire, I don't like using Energy Orb, because it takes away from people getting their combustion, and it does affect the damage on the bosses if we're trying to push for like 1 ice, 1 cage. People taking the Energy Orb instead of combustion hurts. So I normally do Blazing Spear for the little bit extra resource gain for everybody instead of Energy Orb. But if you're in a new group where they're just dying a lot more, I would do Energy Orb instead. If you're with somebody who's like a co-healer that's not necessarily the best, you can't rely on them or trust them to do their job properly, Energy Orb is still one of the best hots in the game. So if you're having any kind of issue at all, just run Energy Orb instead. You could switch it over, some like on other classes, I'll run Mystic instead of Energy, so the combustion still goes out for me, but that's really like if you're in a good group. I wouldn't necessarily do that in a prog group. So front bar, my default for anything on Pilar is Combat Prayer, Illustrious Healing, Blood Altar, Regen, Breath of Life, and then Barrier, which is typically used just for the Magic Aid passive. It's not for using. Back bar, Power of the Light, Wall, Extended Ritual, my Spear or Energy Orb, and then Flex skill, which would be my stam drain since I'm running MK, and then Warhorn. You need to make sure that you have all of your class passives running, your Destro passives, your Resto passives, Armor, of course, your Undaunted, Continuous Attack, Magic Aid, class skills, maybe without spell recharge if you're doing the MK procs, and then medicinal use as usual. Champion points. For healers, they need to coordinate. One needs to be running Enlivening Overflow, the other one needs to be running Hope Infusion. So you'll coordinate that with your co-healer. Normally, I put Enlivening Overflow on the SPC healer since they're always in group pumping out hots anyway. I would rather have the Unlimiting Overflow have the best uptime versus Hope Infusion. Again, like if you have your co-healer is not that great. If there's one I have to pick where it might not have the best uptime because they might be ass. I would rather hope Infusion has less uptime than Enlivening Overflow. So you split this. I always have Fighting Finesse and Soothing Tide. The other one in your blue tree is a flex. So Swift Renewal is my default for my additional skill that I would, or I'm sorry, my additional CP that I would run. The other things you could do if you're in a situation where you're kind of like playing third tank, or you're out in no man's land dealing with a whole bunch of things outside of group, is to give yourself a little bit of extra resistances. Unassailable or Duelist Rebuff and Enduring Resolve would be the 3 that you could flex out if you need a little bit of assistance, depending on what kind of damage you're taking from the content. Rejuvenation, Fortified, and Boundless Vitality for the green, as usual. Again, if I'm running around and doing a lot of things outside a group, I'll run Celerity. If we're in a situation where you're like doing a trifecta and you're just barrier rotoing, obviously Bastion would have a little bit more of a benefit. These are really the only 2 that you play around with on a healer, because you're not doing anything where you're killing an enemy to try to get some more resources back or anything. Mundus. My default Mundus is always the Atronach. It goes back to, if I'm not putting out hots, you're not being healed, that's going to be a problem. The 2 that most people choose from are the Atronach or the Ritual. If you wanted to give yourself a little bit of extra healing done when you put out any skill, you could run the Ritual, but I personally like it. It doesn't matter how much more I'm healing for if I'm not able to put my skills out. So I heal very aggressively, I've been told. So I prefer running the Atronach instead, just so I don't, if I have to weave in a heavy, like, that's a problem. Unless you're running RO, you should never have to weave in a heavy to keep your resources up. So Atronach it is, and I normally run Clockwork Citrus along with. For rotation, again, you want to start out with Combat Prayer whenever you start a fight. Go through your entire rotation and then Combat Prayer before you come off of that bar. Your lowest count on your back bar should be the first one to go out, which for me on this setup would be Power of the Light. So I'll hit Power of the Light first, I'll go through my rotation, and then I'll hit Power of the Light before I leave the bar again. And it's a rinse and repeat from there. You'll break away from doing your rotation anytime something funky is going on. If somebody needs help way off to the right or left, you'll have to break off and then get back to it, but your general rotation when nothing is going on is fairly straightforward. Before a fight starts, I'll put out regen 4 times, make sure everybody has that, so the SPC is ticking. Anything weird that's happening right off the bat, everybody's got that little extra hot running on them. So regen, I'll put up my Blood Altar since it has such a huge uptime. Make sure I've Stam Drained for an instant MK proc. And then when we get into the fight, Combat Prayer, start going through the rotation. And that's pretty much it. I didn't put my Spalder out because I didn't want a heavy attack during the parse, since it takes almost 6 minutes to get through a parse on a healer. And no horns, because normally you would wait for your name to get called in a rotation, so. That is the standard rotation for a Plar. If you have any questions, just let me know.